What's up, guys? We are back for another week of fights. It is the long-awaited pay-per-view UFC 273. It's been in the horizon. It's been in the back of our minds for quite a while now. Two big championship fights in two of the best weight classes in mixed martial arts, in my opinion. Featherweight and bantamweight strap on the line. Volkanovski, the Korean zombie. Peter Yan, the rematch, long-awaited rematch. Bad blood with Aljamain Sterling, the current champion. The return of Hansen, Chimaev, just so much to love, and there's a lot of other puzzling fights on the rest of this card on both the main event and the prelims. So, there's some no-brainer picks here as far as some big favorites go, and the betting lines definitely indicate that there are some no-brainer picks, but that gives us the opportunity to look at the underdog side of things. Is that reigning champion or that big favorite, really warrant that huge price tag? Or can we start looking at the possibility of an underdog having value in the betting market? So there's a lot of opportunity to make money on this card, in my opinion. We're going to try to find some sneaky spots, and I'm also going to try to make this one as concise as possible, just because trying to make it more prediction based, getting my crystal ball a little bit as to how these fights will play out, and save some of the details for the best bets video later on in the week. There are 13 fights. Don't want this to run 5 hours long, so let's get into it. First fight of the night is a bantamweight bout between Julio Arce taking on the debuting Daniel Willie Cat Santos. Very exciting debutant here in Daniel Santos. I love very powerful, very quick. Seems not to be kind of a fearless Brazilian coming in here. So very good Muay Thai background, some flashy knockouts. He's got one of the nastiest spinning back kick to the body knockouts I've seen. He's coming out of that shoot to box camp down there in Brazil, training with the likes of the current champion at 155, my boy, Charles Oliveira. So that might be part of why he's getting such a high-profile fight here in his debut. I mean, not only is he impressive on the regional scene, questionable competition, but this is a big step. And they actually had paired him up against Timur Valiev. I think that might have been a last-minute notice fight. Didn't pan out, but that was in the fall. So they think highly of him to match him up with maybe Timur Valiev and now Julio Arce. So, hey, I don't blame him. I mean, it's a big step up, but the bantamweight division is so stacked that if you have a bit of a shortcut to get through, you're facing tough guys like Julio Arce, and you're still like in the top 50. You're not even close to the top 15. So have at it, and I think it should be a fun fight. About as close as the lines indicate, in my opinion. I think they're pretty spot on. Plus 155 underdog price on Daniel Santos, minus 180 or so for Julio Arce. I think Julio Arce is the deserving favorite here. I like his striking. As fearless as the 27-year-old Daniel Santos is, the fights that I saw in the regional scene, he's getting off highlight reel after highlight reel striking sequence, but they're against guys that are covering up, not really throwing anything back, and he's leading the dance in just about all of those spots. And actually having some pretty close fights in some of them as well. So Julio Arce coming off of a loss, which is probably driving that price on him down just a little bit, but it was against Song Yadong, so that guy's legitimate, as we've seen. Just destroyed Marlon Moraes as well, so I don't really count that one too much against him. I do like his wins, though, against Julian Erosa. I like his wins over Dan Ige, and I like his wins over especially Andre Ewell. And why I say especially Andre Ewell is just because Ewell was such a long, kind of confusing guy to strike against, a long southpaw, huge reach advantage on him, and, Julio Arce was able to solve that puzzle with very, very crafty striking. And I think that's where he's going to give Daniel Santos trouble. I think he can actually strike with Santos in the pocket. I think he sets up traps very well that Santos will fall into as a rookie. And, I like the experience edge for Julio Arce as well. So give me Julio Arce to win at least a decision in this fight. I think he can win all 3 rounds, if not 2 out of 3. I think the KO, TKO is live for either guy in this spot. I think both can finish each other, but we haven't seen it, we haven't seen Santos fall to a finish that way. So, I'll play Julio Arce by decision as my prediction for this fight. Okay, this next fight up in the women's strawweight division, I am so confused on, honestly. I'm pretty torn. I don't know how anybody could be overly confident in either side. I mean, if you are pretty confident in the side here, you're seeing something I'm not. We've got the official debut of Piera Rodriguez, who's coming off of a pretty lackluster Dana White Contender Series win, if I'm being honest, taking on Kay Hansen, who has been pretty lackluster in her own right, but at least she's been in the UFC. At least she has that UFC experience. 7-5 record for Kay Hansen versus the 7-0 undefeated streak for Piera Rodriguez. Not very difficult sometimes to get that undefeated record coming off of the regional women's scene in MMA, but she has had one LFA main event where she was able to secure the belt there in a fifth round stoppage, which was pretty impressive. But then she goes to the Dana White Contender Series last fall and goes 29-28 against an opponent in Machado who I didn't think was that impressive. Barely outstruck her and only won the fight based on like 4 minutes of total control time that she was able to secure over 3 takedowns. So at least Kay Hansen is able to, seem to bully her opponents against the cage, eventually get the takedown if she's able to. I'd say striking skill for skill. Kay Hansen doesn't look bad at times. In this fight, she'll be against somebody who's her same size. 5'3" for Rodriguez, I think 5'2" for Hansen. Same reach, 63-inch reach for each woman here. I'd favor the striking of Piera Rodriguez just because it's more aggressive. Sometimes technical, sometimes not for Rodriguez. But I think where the defense is the difference maker. Eating a shot, eating a punch, eating a kick or a knee or an elbow. I feel like Piera Rodriguez and all the tape I've seen of her, she seems to react to that a lot better. She shakes it off, doesn't wear that damage on her face. Seems pretty durable, and I don't really see that from Kay Hansen to as large of an extent as I do Rodriguez. So I like the durability, at least visually, from Rodriguez. I'm going to have to rely on Kay Hansen to go in there and get a bunch of control time over Rodriguez, and that's where I would like to pick her based on her UFC experience. I'd like to pick her based on her ability to at least try, like her pattern of at least trying to get the takedowns. She just lost to Jasmine Jasudavicius, which I think Jasudavicius is actually a decent fighter, so that was okay. But this is going to be probably the toughest test of Piera Rodriguez. It's just the inconsistency. She'll go in there and get a 5-round fight and get a 5-round stoppage in the LFA, which is, a decent performance against a decent opponent. But then she looks so lackluster in the Dana White Contender Series. I don't know. She's very low volume. Even Kay Hansen had more volume striking-wise than Piera Rodriguez in her last fight against Jasmine. So, I'm going to go very, 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 very slightly with Kay Hansen. One, because she's got the UFC experience. I think she can be the better wrestler here. And then also, she just happens to be like an underdog price. So it's a complete coin flip of a fight. At least you can probably find plus money on Kay Hansen. And she has that UFC experience, slightly higher volume. So it's probably the slightest of picks here, but I'm going to take Kay Hansen. Okay, up next, another debutante in the UFC. Third fight in a row where we've got somebody making their debut. This is Josh Fremd, a guy who's pretty well known on the regional scene, taking on Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, a veteran of the UFC for several fights now. Last time we saw Anthony Fluffy Hernandez fight, he was able to choke out the corpse of Rodolfo Vieira in a very, very big upset. And that was about 14 months ago, I believe, like last February. So Anthony Hernandez, probably rightfully so, minus 190 favorite over the underdog Josh Fremd, who is plus 160. But I think this fight could play out a lot closer. I smell an upset in this fight probably. And I think there's some very deceiving things about Josh Fremd. From a matchup perspective, I think there's some deceiving things. First deceiving thing I see is that at first glance, Fluffy Hernandez had a lot of other opponents for this fight, and they finally got him, Josh Fremd, on like 9 days' notice or something like that. It was like last week when Dricus du Plessis pulled out from the Hernandez fight, and now they put Josh Fremd in. He was told about it 9 days ago, but I saw an interview. I kind of dove into this a bit deeper because I figured he was probably on the verge of getting the UFC ever since like last May when he took on Gregory Rodriguez in the LFA. And he got knocked out by Gregory Rodriguez. I actually bet against him for that fight card and cashed that bet at my boy RoboCop. But nonetheless, he's bounced back with 2 wins. But he probably knew that if he won that fight against Rodriguez, that he'd probably have a ticket into the UFC, as a lot of those main event winners from the LFA do. But he had to go back to the drawing board, go back, get another win in the LFA. He went to the FAC 12 event earlier this year where Dana White and the matchmakers made their appearance, signing some fighters to the UFC. And he was told at that event, I learned from an interview, that, he should stay ready. So that was already back in like February 6th of this year. He was staying ready. He has not worked a real job since then. He's been in the gym every day grinding just in case he gets that phone call, which he now got. So he's not really on short notice, in my opinion. Of course, he doesn't know who he's fighting until he gets that call, but neither did Anthony Hernandez. So Anthony Hernandez was preparing for a few different people in the past, but just for this fight card, he was preparing for that Russian prospect, Albert Duraev, a big grappler, and he was preparing for Dricus du Plessis, who is a very hot prospect right now. So he was preparing for a couple tough opponents, so he's ready as well. But I think Josh Fremd is, young and hungry, both 28 years old. Josh Fremd, the bigger man, lengthwise, 76.5-inch reach, 6'4", whereas Fluffy Hernandez, 6 foot even. So, Josh Fremd does pretty well. He's got good lateral movement. He's pretty good on the feet. He's shown some slick submissions, especially in his last fight. And, I just like the skill set. He's very, very fast. I think he'll be the faster man in this bout. And for plus 160, I think I'm going to take him in this fight. I like I like some of the wins from Hernandez, but just lately he hasn't really fought. He hasn't been that active, and he, beating a death-gassed being a death-gassed Rodolfo Vieira, it's impressive in a way, but it's also like the guy was completely dead. So of course you could look good against a walking corpse in the octagon. I just haven't seen a high-level win from him in a while. So, I don't know. Before that, he had lost to Kevin Holland, and before that, choking out Julian Park. So he's got the experience I like, but Josh Fremd, another deceiving thing about him is he's got a pretty long amateur career, very similar to Anthony Hernandez. So both young guys, both very experienced guys, but, I'm gonna roll the dice. I'm going to take Josh Fremd to win this fight, and I think he does it inside the distance. Okay, interesting fight moving up the early prelims between Oleinik getting a replacement fight here in Jared Vanderaa. Oleinik was scheduled to fight Ilir Latifi, but Ilir Latifi pulled out of their fight just 2 weeks ago. They weighed in and everything, faced off and everything. Some illness caused Ilir Latifi. I never actually dug into what that was, but it was canceled like fight day. So that was a shame, but we've got almost a more interesting fight here because we've got better odds. We've got pick'em price 110, minus 110 for each fighter here. Jared Vanderaa, 29 years old, compared to Oleinik, who turns 45 in 2 months. So this is almost elder abuse at this point. I mean, 6'2", Oleinik, 80-inch reach. A pretty big guy, but for heavyweight, not so big anymore. He looked big against Ilir Latifi, but Ilir Latifi is pretty small. So Jared Vanderaa, 6'4", the equal reach, 80-inch reach. So, Oleinik is on a 3-fight losing streak. His cardio is kind of shot to bits these days. His durability is kind of shot to bits these days. As you would expect, the guy is 59, 16-1 in mixed martial arts. Been fighting since the 90s. Not everything lasts forever, but very, very sneaky submission game. I think that will be nullified here because Jared Vanderaa is decently competent on the ground. Not the best wrestler. If you're a bigger man, like a Romanov or a Spivak, and you've got that wrestling, the ability to get the fight to the ground and dominate him there, you can overwhelm him. But I don't see that happening with Oleinik, who does some of his best submission work recently in his old age, from letting his opponents get him into a mount and, do some sort of like Ezekiel or a scarf choke or something like that. I don't think Jared Vanderaa is going to fall for that, a legitimate BJJ black belt and just a younger guy. I think he's going to be a much bigger man in there, especially when you see them at the weigh-ins, so I think that's going to be too much. I don't think Oleinik is the guy at this point in his career to muscle Jared Vanderaa around in the clinch and, wrestle him to the ground. So I don't see that being too big of a deal. So then what's left for Oleinik to outstrike Vanderaa? Vanderaa just kind of passed the old-timer test in Andrei Arlovski, in my opinion, going to a razor close split decision, against Arlovski just a couple months ago. I think Jared Vanderaa, I would not have been surprised if they raised his hand and he was the winner, and now 3-2 in the UFC instead of 2-3. So at a minus 110 price tag, I'm taking Jared Vanderaa. I think that's a pretty good money line spot on this card as well. You've got all the confident picks that are very, very juiced money lines. You're paying a lot and risking a lot of money to just get one unit back in some of these main event spots. I think this is a good money line to sprinkle some money on because, at worst, you're losing, minus 110. So almost an even money pick against the guy who's almost 45 years old. Yeah, give me Jared Vanderaa to win by TKO. Okay, up next, a kind of confusing fight here at welterweight between Mickey Gall and the newcomer Mike Malott. And Mike Malott was a guy who was kind of more of a contender back in the day. Took some time off, was training down there at Team Alpha Male. I think he might have even been staff at Team Alpha Male for a while. Competed in some grappling, came back to mixed martial arts, got a pretty impressive win in CFFC, and then was granted the opportunity to get on the Dana White Contender Series last year. Secured a contract in 30 to 40 seconds, easy guillotine choke, and the guy looked so calm in the Apex Octagon that it was kind of scary for a newcomer. So easy, quick work, got a contract, and now he's fighting against Mickey Gall. Mickey Gall is kind of the opposite case of Mike Malott, where he was just as green in his mixed martial arts career, but got in the UFC quick and has stayed there, managed to stay in the UFC, trading wins and losses, 7-4 in his mixed martial arts professional record, and 10 of those fights have been in the UFC. So pretty crazy that he's still in the UFC, pretty crazy that he's got 10 UFC fights and only 11 fights overall. So pretty odd. I mean, you can pick apart his wins and his losses. They just don't make much sense to me for Mickey Gall. I don't get a good read on this guy. He'll have some impressive moments here and there, but then he'll lose to like the last guy to legitimately lose to Diego Sanchez was Mickey Gall, who got kind of out-wrestled by him there. Very confusing. That was about 3 years ago now. Moving on to his last fight against Alex Morono. We really didn't expect Mickey Gall to win that fight. It was, I think Morono was a pretty sizable favorite in that fight, or at least he should have been. And, by round 2, it was already live odds, minus 700 for Alex Morono. I mean, Mickey Gall he just has trouble getting the fight to his world. He has trouble with that. One of those guys that has that trouble getting the fight to the ground, where he probably is the most successful and most likely to dominate and win. So with that gap, I mean, he's 6 and 22 in terms of takedown attempts versus ones that he's gotten. So not very good record there. He did have that impressive moment over Jordan Williams, but you can pick that apart because Jordan Williams is not that great, but was able to choke him out, rock him on the feet, get him to the ground, and get a rear naked choke victory. So that was his last win. Then losing to Morono, now taking on Mike Malott. Both guys are 30 years old. Both guys pretty tall for welterweight. 6'2" for Gall, 6 foot or 6'1" for Malott, I believe. Reach is about the same. Mike Malott, I just feel just has more of a natural talent, more of a fighter, almost mindset. I mean, if you look at this, I know these are intangibles, non-metric related things that I'm giving Mike Malott here, but just that calmness that he has in the cage. He just looks like he's back in practice, and it's in a good way. It's not like Mickey Gall can look like he's more of a casual fighter in the cage when he should be pushing the action. He's very low volume. He's open to being backed up at times, again, in a most recent fight against Morono. Very, once he couldn't secure those takedowns, once he was getting outpointed by Morono, he was just kind of accepted it and kind of just gave up, it seemed like, in a way. So Mike Malott, I don't feel like he's going to be that fighter. The only problem with Mike Malott is that he has a lot of quick finishes, and you haven't seen, probably since some 2015 Bellator card, have we seen Mike Malott go to decisions. So we'd have to bank on the fact that he is as much of in shape as he looks. He's very ripped for 170, a lot of muscle mass. I saw him talking about his training camp that he finished back in Canada for this one. He's been training since January for a fight. So he walks around at 190 or so and spars at that weight. So big guy, makes the weight cut pretty well and looks in tremendous shape. So we're gonna have to make some assumptions. I'm picking Mike Malott to win this fight. I don't know if he wins. I don't know if he submits. The BJJ legitimate black belt in Mickey Gall. it's hard. You got to make some assumptions that he can take this fight past round one and still be, still be fresh in this fight. So I think he's in good enough shape. I'll make that assumption. I'll take Mike Malott to win this fight. Probably inside the distance would be the best bet. Okay, up next, a bantamweight bout between, and I say bantamweight with an asterisk because I'm sure this will be either canceled or changed to featherweight by the time we get through with fight week. And this is Aspen Ladd taking on Raquel Pennington. And I don't like this fight. Any aspect of breaking down this fight, any aspect of predicting this fight, any aspect of betting this fight, trying to find value on either side. Between Aspen Ladd and Raquel Pennington, I mean, it's just so, it's such a weird fight because, they're both former 145ers at some point, right? Aspen Ladd has missed weight horribly a couple times, and she was kind of banished to 145. That's just really the division where Amanda Nunes holds a belt, and maybe like 5 or so women exist just because they missed weight to bantamweight and they can't make it, So Raquel Pennington has missed weight in the past. She just fought Macy Chiason at 145, who still missed weight to make 145. So Raquel Pennington minus 180 favorite over Aspen Ladd plus 155. I'm really shocked, actually, every time I see that Raquel Pennington is only 33 because she's fought pretty much everybody in the women's division. She's been in the game for a long time. She got in the game young, just in women's MMA. Would I call her a pioneer of women's MMA? Maybe, because it doesn't take much to be a pioneer of women's MMA. You just have to exist and fight and keep fighting. So she's lost to the best, beaten some of the, above average women. And, after her loss to Holly Holm just a couple of years ago, she now has racked up a 3-fight win streak against Marion Renault, who is old. Penny Kanzad, who's, that was a decent win, but she's got her own problems. And Macy Chiason, who's kind of a busted prospect as well. So, I'm kind of tearing apart her 3-fight win streak, but I do like that she's on a 3-fight win streak. At least she has momentum coming into this fight, which you cannot say the same for Aspen Ladd, who really has no momentum coming to this. She had the embarrassing performance against Norma Dumont where she lost 5 rounds, pretty much had to have her coach, mentally and verbally abuse her on the stool just to try to get her to not quit and go back out there. And what did she do? She just kind of walked with her hands on her cheeks and got jabbed, and her neck snapped back, time and time again against Norma Dumont. Norma Dumont, great fighter, don't get me wrong, but that performance was horrible from Aspen Ladd, and that's probably single-handedly why she's a plus 155 favorite. So, yeah, I'm going to pick Raquel Pennington to win this fight. I'm going to pick her to win this fight by decision. I liked Aspen Ladd because any woman that starts to get violent finishes time and time again in the UFC, you have to take notice, and that's why she was able to get a, albeit it was like a short notice fight, like a fight cancellation that got her that main event spot. But, that's why she got that main event spot against Norma Dumont, is because she was, one of the few women's fighters at 135 that was getting finishes and, screaming, on every punch, ground and pounding, her opponent's face off. But she's kind of been exposed here, and a lot of it has to do with her just not being able to make weight. She looks horrible. I don't even know why I'm breaking this fight down. It'll probably be canceled. You'll probably see Aspen Ladd shaking on the scale, and they'll probably just call this fight off or move it up to 145 once again. So give me Raquel Pennington to win a pretty clear-cut decision here. Okay, up next, the big boys heavyweight fight between Jairzinho Rozenstruik taking on Marcin Tybura. Puzzling fight once again. I mean, this is an odd one that I don't like. I got to give a big shout out to my guy For the Love MMA 420, my guy Chris, friend of mine on the Twitter space. If you're watching this, shout out to you, man. You got me thinking about this fight probably about 2 weeks ago already. So, you put out a tweet or something. We were talking in the DMs about how much of a deal there was on Jairzinho Rozenstruik at the line. It wasn't like minus 165 like it is now. It was probably about 20 or 30 points lower than that. And we were kind of shocked at that price, and I like that price a lot more than this price now. But no matter what the price is on Rozenstruik, I'm not really a big fan of the guys. I mean, he's a power puncher, pretty powerful guy, but does nothing up until he wins the fight. Plus, I don't like him because he beat my guy. He beat Overeem, at the gilded age of Overeem's career. Right at the end, he had to just shit on that 5-round decision victory and knock him out. 4 seconds left, early stoppage. But anyways, I haven't liked Rozenstruik since then, and he has not won me over as a fan with his performances like the one against Cyril Gane, where he does nothing the whole fight, loses decision. The past one against Curtis Blades, where he does nothing, a couple of good moments, but loses the decision. It's just tough to get behind this guy. He's losing the fight until he wins, and then half of the time he just loses the fight and never gets anything going. He had that close scare against Curtis Blades, where he just out of nowhere, just like flying kneed him in the face and swelled up his eye. So that was almost kind of one of the moments where he was losing up until he wins. But rumor has it he's working on his grappling. Rumor has it he might be lighter for this fight, maybe a little bit quicker. But, who cares if he's faster, if he's, doing nothing most of the fight. Marcin Tybura, on the other hand, is actually a pretty active fighter. I mean, not the best guy, not the most durable guy, not the guy who's going to go out there and, challenge for the belt, probably not. But plus 135 on a guy who will look for takedowns, at least fling strikes out there, on occasion. And he usually outlands his opponents. Unless he's getting knocked out, he's outlanding his opponents over the course of 15 minutes. So, and there's been a lot of guys recently that have been supposed to knock him out, I guess Alexander Volkov in the last fight was, I think most people called Alexander Volkov inside the distance by knockout, right? That didn't happen. Walt Harris, power puncher. Everybody gave Walt Harris, the bigger guy, the more powerful guy in round one. He should be able to get this done against Tybura in round one. He did not, Greg Hardy even, was probably predicted by a lot of people. It was probably more of a coin flip fight, if anything. But at that point, Greg Hardy had the athletic ability to knock out Tybura. Didn't do it. Got finished. So there's a lot of spots here where I'm just hearing everybody say, and I'm one of those people. I think that, most likely scenario is Rozenstruik will land something pretty early on Tybura, get him out of there. But I have just a sinking feeling that Tybura is able to push him against the cage, maybe grab a leg, get him off balance, take him to the ground, just do pitter-patter ground-and-pound shots just to get control time and points and win the fight. And once again, we're like, wow, we should have seen this coming. Rozenstruik did nothing once again. But like I said, most likely scenario, I think Rozenstruik does come out here. He finds he's probably losing the fight until he wins it at some point. I think I think their reach is about equal, Tybura might be the slightly taller man in this fight. He's also older than Rozenstruik, surprisingly, by a couple of years. So, but yeah, I don't think Tybura has the durability to withstand the power punching or kicking or knees of Jairzinho Rozenstruik, but man, I wouldn't pay the money line. I'd probably pay the knockouts, if anything. I think it's very unlikely that Rozenstruik wins a decision in this fight. Usually he gets that knockout or he's losing the fight. So I'm very, I was more confident a couple weeks ago looking at this fight. Then I dove into the tape study and I had to relive the boring Rozenstruik fights where you're pretty much screaming at him to do something and he doesn't, that moment just never comes sometimes. So reluctantly give me Jairzinho Rozenstruik around to 1 KO. But at this price tag on the money line, I'm not too confident. Okay, up next, the main event of the preliminary card is Ian Garry, 8-0, surging Irish prospect, taking on Darian Weeks. Darian Weeks making his second outing in the UFC. Last time he fought against Brian Barberena, it was a tough ask for him, and he lost the decision. But people gave him a lot of credit for actually making it competitive, going to decision when he seemingly has not a whole lot of experience in mixed martial arts as a professional. He does have an extended amateur career in mixed martial arts, a lot of fight experience there, but still a tough ask against a veteran like Barberena. He went to decision, but I saw a lot of holes in his game, not the best technique, and I think that's going to be exploited by a more talented, more athletic Ian Garry, who's coming from Cage Warriors, had a lot of finishes in his career, but more importantly, we're talking about. I see one of the criticisms is, can he hang with Darian Weeks if it goes late, if he goes into deep waters? Did they not watch the fight against Jack Grant where he won a 5-round decision? against Jack Grant, who's a phenomenal athlete over there overseas. So I'm not sure some of the criticism I'm seeing, but I can start seeing it now. People picking Darian Weeks as an underdog. I can see that because the price has gotten so out of control that it's kind of ridiculous. I'm already seeing some books have minus 400 for Ian Garry and plus 300 on Darian Weeks as an underdog. I think at that point you can start kind of maybe taking some pokes at Weeks by decision, things like that. I could see some value on, but just as a straight up pick, I think Ian Garry is the more powerful guy. He looked amazing in his debut. I know that, it was kind of a slow to warm up build to that finishing sequence. But, I mean, that finishing sequence was a thing of beauty. I know Jordan Williams is a bit chinny. They definitely gave him a layup of a debuting opponent there. What better guy than Jordan Williams? A pretty formidable opponent in the early going of the round. But, definitely a chinny guy that they wanted Ian Garry to start a highlight reel with. So that was definitely handpicked. But I think this is a handpicked opponent too. Darian Weeks has a chance to win this fight, much better chance than plus 300, I would say, but I still think Ian Garry wins this fight, and I think he wins it inside the distance. Give me Ian Garry by TKO. I'd say a round one. Give me a round one TKO for Ian Garry. Interesting fight kicking off the main card at 155, lightweight division. Vince Pichel taking on Mark Madsen. And surprisingly, Mark Madsen is 37 years old. He's going to be 2 years younger than Vince Pichel at 39. Mark Madsen, 11-0 record. Vince Pichel, also a pretty impressive record, 14-2. And Pichel has been in the UFC for a heck of a long time. I've been hearing his name because it goes all the way back to, I think, that Team Lesnar-Carwin Ultimate Fighter back in like 2011 or 2012 it was. So he's been around for a while. And only losing to Al Iaquinta on the show, which was an exhibition, doesn't count towards his professional MMA record. He lost to Rustam Khabilov, which, again, if you go back to the name Rustam Khabilov, you know that he's going back quite a ways in the UFC, almost 10 years now. And Gregor Gillespie more recently, which was a forgivable loss because Gillespie is just an absolute problem. So pretty good record. He's racked up some pretty relevant wins in the division so far, and he's looked pretty good doing it. Good amount of momentum for 39 years old. It's shocking. But Mark Madsen, the slightly smaller man by height, 5'8", slight reach disadvantage, I believe, as well. Amazing athletic potential from this guy. A silver medalist in the Olympics, Olympic wrestler. And it's hard to believe that a guy with that kind of athletic potential, I know it's like more of an explosive type of athleticism, but still, to be in the Olympics and you've got a cardio problem towards the end of the fights, by the end of round 2, he's kind of wearing that gas tank. In his fight against Clay Guida, most recently, greasy split decision win over Clay Guida, who is as grizzled as they come, as old as they come, still getting wins somehow over these tough guys. And he lost that split decision to Clay Guida because of kind of like a fight IQ lapse, I would say. And maybe he was trying to conserve his energy at some point because of how tough Clay Guida is in the grappling realm. But he should have been able to out-grapple Clay Guida. I mean, for God's sake, the guy is an Olympian, I don't know why he didn't go more that way and go towards a striking battle, which is why it was so close. But Vince Pichel has a striking advantage in this fight. He's got a height and reach advantage, and he's got a very good inside-outside kicking game as well for the leg kicks, especially that outside leg kick, very damaging. And I think that he can do that. This is where the gamble for this fight comes for me, is I think Vince Pichel is quick enough, and I think he's long enough compared to Mark Madsen where he can land those outside leg kicks and do damage without the risk of getting taken down. But if he does throw a limp leg out there and get taken down by Mark Madsen has the capability to hold him down for long periods of time. That could be, if that happens early in a round, that could be a round 1 for Mark Madsen, especially rounds 1 or 2, where he's got the most energy. So, looking at the betting odds, we're looking at plus 110 right now for Mark Madsen, slight underdog. Vince Pichel, slight favorite, minus 130. It's hard to lay money confidently in either guy, in my opinion. I see a lot of people in the betting community, a lot of cappers that are pretty confident in Vince Pichel. I'm not that confident in him. I think he does get it done. I'll pick him to win a decision here. But, just the capability of Mark Madsen to really do some good control time numbers in rounds 1 and 2. And then Vince Pichel maybe has a great round 3. And now he's lost the 29-28 decision. I can see that as a big possibility, but I'm going to take the momentum. I'm going to take what we've seen from Vince Pichel lately, and I think he does do damage with those strikes to the legs. I think he is long enough and has going to use his range well enough to stay out of harm's way and hopefully not get taken down in this fight, at least control. He's got a pretty good scramble ability too. So just that coupled with his huge UFC experience advantage, I'll take Vince Pichel to win a close decision here. Okay, up next, the final women's bout of the night between Tecia Torres taking on Mackenzie Dern. Mackenzie Dern, slight favorite in this bout, minus 120 favorite. Tecia Torres, even money, plus 100 play here. Torres, of course, will be the smaller woman, 5'1". She usually is, 60-inch reach. And Mackenzie Dern, 5'4", 63-inch reach. I still think even with the reach disadvantage, Tecia Torres will be boxing up Mackenzie Dern here. I think that's going to happen. She usually attempts and lands more volume per minute by quite a big margin, does Tecia Torres. And she's fought, and that's over a big sample size, and she's fought some of the best women, lost to a lot of the best women, but, she's hung around the game. Both women have actually hung around, and I think Mackenzie Dern has a bright future as well in the division here, but yeah, she's shoring up that striking, slowly but surely. Her game, her submission game is probably one of the best out of any woman in the divisions in the UFC. But she, like a lot of jiu-jitsu players, she struggles to get it to the ground. She has 3 takedowns total in her UFC career out of a large amount. It's like 20 plus attempted. Many of those in that Marina Rodriguez fight, unsuccessful. But she's got a lot of submission wins that she has because her opponents will follow her to the ground. Dern will grab an arm here or there. She does have that impressive unanimous decision victory over Virna Jandiroba. So Tecia Torres kind of is going to win this fight in one way. By decision, out-voluming, out-striking, staying off of the ground, she can win a decision. So I would, if you're going to play Tecia Torres, I don't like getting greedy when things are already plus money, but you might as well, look for that Tecia Torres by decision prop if it's at least plus 150 or more, I would say. Any less than that, and I would just say just play the money line just because, why not? But why risk it? But Mackenzie Dern, minus 120, it's just tempting because there's the opportunity for that sneaky submission that she could find at any moment that Tecia Torres slips up and plays in the guard of Mackenzie Dern. Maybe Mackenzie Dern can even exploit that poor takedown defense of Tecia Torres. If she's smart, she'll go for it, and then she could land a submission that way. Or she could just ride out, say Tecia Torres is very defensively sound against the submissions. Mackenzie Dern could just be the bigger woman here, actually land some takedowns and ride out control time, either against the cage or get Tecia Torres on her back. So I could see Dern winning by decision. I could see Dern winning by submission. So it's just tough when I can see a couple different avenues for Mackenzie Dern. I can see why she is a slight favorite in this fight, but at plus 100 and just such a proven track record against some of the tougher women in the division to show some resiliency and all of the experience that she has. She's seen it all. I'm going to go with Tecia Torres as a plus 100, but it really is such a close fight in my opinion. I could easily see this going Dern's way, but since the odds are, not quite 50-50, I see this fight as 50-50. The odds are showing, slightly less chance that Torres wins, so I'll pick her to win this fight by decision. That's the prop I would look for. Okay, up next, the welterweight fight we've been waiting for between Khamzat Chimaev and Gilbert Burns. This is a crazy fight just in the way that I've never seen, or not that I've never seen, but it's been a long time since I've seen somebody like Khamzat Chimaev. I've been watching the UFC and mixed martial arts in general for decades, since I was a little kid. And the only fighter that I think has had the same aura as Khamzat Chimaev, not that I'm comparing their skills just yet, but Anderson Silva coming into the UFC and just having that impressive debut against Chris Lieben, where he had 100% accuracy, was not touched and just dismantled a guy that was, supposed to at least give him some sort of resistance coming in. It almost feels like that with Khamzat Chimaev's career so far. He's only been touched, I think, by one significant strike that they've counted officially on the metrics. He's just absolutely dusted people, nobody making it out of the middle of the second round. So, anytime you're able to go in there in front of a live audience, pick up Li Jingliang with no resistance, throw him to the ground and choke him out, it's just a thing of beauty. So, I don't know how far this Khamzat Chimaev thing is going to go, but it's good to see him tested against a guy who's at least been a title challenger in Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns is, such a monster, but the problem is, in this spot, even though Chimaev is rather untested, and there's a lot of unknowns for him to be a minus 520 favorite and beyond, it's just the size difference, it's the size difference. How big Khamzat Chimaev is, fought at middleweight, walks around at God knows how heavy he walks around. He's 6'2", very, very long, rangy fighter. He can strike. He's got power in his kicks, in his fists. He's got just a crazy grappling ability as well. Not that Gilbert Burns doesn't, but there's weight classes for a reason. And I feel like the fact that Khamzat Chimaev is able to make this weight and Gilbert Burns, a former lightweight, I just think that's going to be really the difference maker. Now, do I think that Gilbert Burns is going to roll over and die the way that Li Jingliang sort of did? I don't think so. I don't see Gilbert Burns getting. I could see him getting knocked out on the feet, but I could see this being a situation where just the stronger, bigger man is able to get in close against Gilbert Burns, peel him to the ground, and just through sheer physicality, be able to stay safe against any sort of jiu-jitsu magic that Gilbert Burns would have up his sleeve. We haven't really seen any of that jiu-jitsu magic from Gilbert Burns in the UFC in a long while. But I would say that it's going to be a spot where Gilbert Burns kind of stays defensively sound against any submission attempts from Khamzat Chimaev and just gets ground and pounded into a TKO stoppage will be my prediction for this fight. But yeah, a lot of unknowns, and the minus 520, way too big of an unknown. I'd say out of the three final fights of this card, I'd say just because of the unknowns, I'd say Khamzat Chimaev might be the most likely out of these next three fights to lose, just because we haven't seen him take a punch, so how do we really know? But, all of the high praise from other professional fighters with big egos talking up Khamzat Chimaev year after year in the training room, he might be the real deal. So, again, this is largely because of the skill we've seen, but largely because of the physicality and just the size difference. I'm going to pick Khamzat Chimaev by, I'd say, second round TKO. At long last, it is finally here. The Bantamweight Championship bout, continuation of last year between Aljamain Sterling, the reigning defending champion, taking on Petr Yan. So we all know what happened last year. Petr Yan it was actually a somewhat competitive fight in some regards, but the tides were definitely turning. Petr Yan was definitely en route to win that fight, most likely, but through that illegal strike, the illegal knee in round 4, certainly a fight-ending shot, no doubt about it, but Aljo definitely played it up a little bit more than people liked. He gets put in a very interesting predicament where he either quits and wins the belt or keeps going and potentially loses because he's hurt, so he kind of played it up, ended up winning the fight by disqualification, gets gold around his waist for the next year, and has had injury after injury and like neck surgery and all types of things. So I kind of do question his health and how, if there's going to be ring rust, what mental state he's in this weird predicament where he's going to get, he's gotten hate for the past year holding the belt. So I don't really know what kind of headspace he's in, but all that aside, he is going to be the slightly bigger man because he's 5'7" like Petr Yan, but what do we have here? Like a 5-inch reach advantage, 71-inch reach for Aljamain Sterling. Petr Yan, the minus 490 betting favorite, interim bantamweight champion after beating Corey Sandhagen, and that was in October, I believe that was. And yeah, so 29 years old only is the younger man, Petr Yan. So that's also something to take note of, for all of the bouts that he's been in, all of the success he's had, become champion, beat the greats like Jose Aldo. He's 29 years old, so still should be, in theory, getting better. It's an interesting fight that we have here because I don't think it'll be necessarily as easy as people think it will be. I mean, Aljo is kind of been made out to be this fake champion that doesn't deserve the belt, but he's a great athlete, a great bantamweight fighter, and the bantamweight division is by far and away the most competitive, most talent-deep division, so that is saying something that he is a plus 360 underdog in this fight. It's pretty crazy, but, I mean, what do you expect? It's almost like that phenomenon that happens when a fight is booked, the price is set, and then, the fight gets delayed like a month. When those prices are reset, they're always more steep on both sides. That's kind of what's happening here. And Aljo coming off of, what most people would consider to be a loss. And then Peter Yan has since gotten a 5-round impressive win for the interim belt against Corey Sandhagen, who was on quite a run. So impressive. And in that Corey Sandhagen fight, Peter Yan was actually outstruck by the numbers by Corey Sandhagen. Every round except for one round, all rounds except for round 4, he was outstruck by Corey Sandhagen. But he still was the more efficient striker. He landed the cleaner shots, and he was more accurate with the shots. He missed less in the judges' eyes than Corey Sandhagen. And, if you look on paper, it almost looks like a robbery. But mix that with some control time, takedowns. He stuffed like all but one takedown of Corey Sandhagen in that fight over 5 rounds. And, if you watch the fight, he's the clear winner. If you look at it on paper, it looks very, very close, which it was. I mean, it was a tough fight, but that was a good fight to kind of get his mind right. I'm glad he won't be going into this fight against Aljamain Sterling, with the sort of emotion of that being his last opponent. He's had some time to reset, stay active, get some momentum against a guy in Corey Sandhagen who, is a dynamic striker, powerful striker. I think more of a danger than Aljamain on the feet. And has that long reach that Aljo comes equipped with here. So I think Peter Yan's in a great spot to win this fight. The way that I can see Aljamain Sterling winning is by some sort of sketchy Florida decision where, he was able to reverse control time. Maybe Peter Yan gets the takedown, Aljamain reverses it, lands on top, gets some control time. But I don't see Aljamain Sterling having the same volume as Peter Yan against him. I think Aljamain Sterling is not quite the level of striker of Peter Yan, doesn't have all of the tools in the arsenal that Peter Yan has. Nasty ground game, though, as we saw, Aljamain Sterling was able to choke out Corey Sandhagen, which is, nothing to ignore. That's a pretty... but I just think Peter Yan's going to be so far and above. He's shown a level of prowess in all parts of MMA that don't quite warrant this minus 490 price tag, but I think he's a safe bet on this card, and I've got full faith in him. And I think it would take a bad night from Peter Yan and an amazing night from Aljamain Sterling for this fight to go south and for there to be and still bantamweight champion. I think Aljamain Sterling's going to have to hand that belt over. It's been a good year of being champion, but I think that comes to an end on Saturday. Give me Peter Yan, and give me Peter Yan to win. I think he wins a decision here. I think this fight might go longer. I think both guys might respect the other's ability, and usually Peter Yan is slow starting in round 1, and then accelerates. I think this goes all 5 rounds. Okay, main event time in the featherweight division. Final fight of the night. Alexander Volkanovski defending his belt against the Korean Zombie, my boy Chang Sung-jung. I've been a fan of the Korean Zombies for a long time, man. The first time I saw this guy fight was back in April of 2010, I think it was, against a guy who was well known in the WEC named Leonard Garcia. Those two had a 3-round war to a split decision that was still considered one of the greatest MMA fights of all time. I had to learn everything I could about Chang Sung-jung at the time. It was just, adding the guy on Facebook, this kind of unknown fighter up until that fight. And I don't think there was a C translation button on Facebook back in those days. So my Facebook was just littered with a bunch of Korean symbols that I had no idea what he was talking about. But awesome guy. He's had a great career. He had to take a 3-year leave for his military duties in his home country. But came back, put away the likes of Dustin Poirier, put away the likes of Frankie Edgar towards the end of his career, Renato Moicano TKO'd, and he was winning that fight against Yair Rodriguez, 5-round war until the last second of that fight when he got knocked out. So he's called the Zombie for a reason. He keeps stalking his opponents down until you knock his head off. So the line has gotten crazy on this fight. Alexander Volkanovski was supposed to fight Max Holloway. Holloway pulls off for injury. They book the Chang Sung-jung fight as a short notice replacement. That gets delayed even once more, I think. So every single time that this has been rescheduled, the line gets crazier. The price gets steeper on Volkanovski, who's now a minus 800 favorite in some books I've seen. I think a lot of more reasonable ones are like minus 700, but still crazy that you can get a plus 500 underdog price on Chang Sung Jung. But, you know, that's just the game that we're in right now. He's not even in the top 5. So taking on one of the greatest champions of featherweight history, a guy who's beat Max Holloway a couple times, all this is playing into the price. The last time that we saw Volkanovski fight against Brian Ortega, you know, a guy who'd only lost to Holloway himself at that point, we saw a lot of questions answered about the grit and the tenacity of Volkanovski. He was finally put in the most danger he'd ever been in. Mounted guillotine that almost popped his head off, a triangle choke. All of Brian Ortega's best techniques were not enough to put away Alexander Volkanovski. So all of that we've seen him persevere, that's all baked into this minus 800 price as well as a favorite. So where's the line is too steep for a men's championship bout in the UFC. I never thought I would see, you know, this is like Amanda Nunes level numbers, Ronda Rousey level numbers for a championship fight. I can't remember the last time that there was a men's champion that was this big of a favorite. You probably have to go back quite a bit unless I'm missing something obvious here, but it's the price is baffling, and the value might actually fall on the Korean Zombie, but I don't see it likely. He never lands the amount of volume, no matter how much he stalks his opponent and attempts strikes, he never lands the volume that you're going to need to defeat Alexander Volkanovski. He's not breaking triple digits, you know, in his significant strike counts in these fights that he's in. So that's going to be something you have to do. Dan Ige, the Korean Zombie was able to use his grappling to, you know, to his advantage to win that fight against Ige. He's not going to be able to do that against Volkanovski. We just saw that proven, you know, against Ortega. So I got Volkanovski winning this fight. I got him winning, I think, inside the distance. You know, we've seen the Zombie's lights turned off before. We've seen him finished. I think Volkanovski packs a pretty mean punch. And I think at some point in this fight of 25 minutes, it's likely that we will see a finish on the part of Volkanovski. I think the under or fight doesn't go to decision here is pretty live. You could probably find plus money on that, I think, at this point. And that would cover the Hail Mary chance that Korean Zombie lands something, you know, something on Volkanovski. So that could cover that as well. I think that's good if it's a price number. Fight doesn't go or under 4.5 rounds. Both would be bets that I would look to place. So I'm pretty confident in Volkanovski. I don't think there's a lot of places to attack Volkanovski inside the distance, maybe if the number is good enough, but I wouldn't do anything under like minus 150 on that, if I'm being honest. So I'll go more into the props and my best bets and props at the end of the week. But right now, give me Volkanovski. I've already had him parlayed up in like a multi-event Hail Mary parlay. I've already had him parlayed up with Peter Yan just a couple weeks ago because I knew these prices would get crazy in a couple weeks. These lines have been out for forever. So as much as I would love to see Korean Zombie with the belt around his waist, I don't see it happening. And I couldn't find, you know, especially looking at the tape, something that people I don't see them talking about is just the difference in technique. You compare and contrast the technique. Volkanovski has amazing crisp combos, all done textbook. Korean Zombie has had some knockouts. He's got power in his hands, but his form is actually very sloppy, especially the longer the fight goes. He's throwing punches from the hip that sometimes land against their targets, but he's very open to getting countered. And it's part of his technique is the flaw as to why he doesn't have some of those bigger striking volume numbers in his fights. So just as a better fighter in every aspect of mixed martial arts, I'm going to take Volkanovski to win, and I'm going to take him to win inside the distance. Okay, and there we have it. All 13 fights for UFC 273, Volkanovski versus the Korean Zombie. It's going to be a fun fight card. I'm so excited that we get to come back from a week off and have this spectacular event, star-studded. I assume there's going to be some funny business at the weigh-ins because Aspen Ladd is attending the weigh-ins, so there has to be some funny business. A couple other people on there that are, you know, debuting in the UFC. Always iffy with them hitting the scales, but all in all, you know, this is I don't have a whole lot of like really odd takes. You know, obviously I'm going with some of the juiced up favorites. They are favorites for a reason. I think Peter Yan, I'm pretty confident in. Chimaev, decently confident in. Volkanovski, of course, even probably the most out of all three of those. Somebody like Jairzinho Rozenstruik, that seems to be everybody's darling this week. I'm not confident in that one at all, really. You know, I made a parlay with him in it a couple weeks ago. I don't like that parlay. I might even hedge out of it. I'm not confident in Rozenstruik. Garry, I seem to be more confident in than most people. Vince Pichel, another person that's everybody's darling this week. I'm not that confident in Vince Pichel at 39 years old. You know, so there's some spots there that the Julio Arce Santos fight, a little iffy on that one as well. So I'm going to go in depth and go through a lot of the props that I like that may or may not cover both sides of fights that I'm iffy on. We'll go into that. I'll have that out either tomorrow or Friday, best bets and props. Might even wait until Friday just to see the weigh-ins and, you know, drop that one after the weigh-ins, see what fights fell off. But I might have it out tomorrow. So I'll go in more in depth into what my confident picks are, the money lines I like, and things like that. But right now, all three of the big favorites in the main events here, Volkanovski, Chimaev, Jan, gonna have to trust in some of these guys this week. So, okay, we'll see you guys next time. Good luck in all of your betting action, and enjoy UFC 273.